And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. We're back with another Wednesday edition of Morning Coffee with Robert Watson, talking about his book as we're working our way through the maxims. We are on maxim number 5, which is called Losing. And I think it's a great chapter because I think that as we were talking a little bit before, sometimes we waste a little bit of the good conversation in the foreground, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about losing.
Yes. Good morning. I'm living this one at the moment. I'm finishing a master's degree, and I was warned about a course in economics that I needed to kind of prepare for because it was, a real onslaught of information, and it wasn't a lot of great setup. You just were going to get assaulted with a bunch of information. And because I got some strength in economics, I decided that it was okay. I could kind of hang back. And the problem was, of course, my economics training was 40 years ago. So, nonetheless, I'm playing catch up basically because what I call it stale thinking is, if you sleep on a gain, you'll wake up with a loss. And that is so true in this case because, I thought, hey, here I am, a guy with a strength in economics, but I hadn't done economic nomenclature and graphs in 40 years, and it shows. So now I'm having to play catch up.
I bet it's pretty different too now. Nikki and Michelle in the chat room, thanks for hanging out with us. I bet it's different now because back then, still recovering from this stupid sickness. Back 40 years ago, you probably had to do everything on a piece of paper, right? And now they're like, hey, here's this, point these data plots into a spreadsheet and then create the graph off the spreadsheet, right? So it's a little different.
Yeah, it's a little bit different world because you can do more graphically than you did when I did it. So yes, I was sitting there with a pencil and a piece of paper. So it is more graphic intensive, and it shouldn't be because I'm in an IR program, international relations program, and everything is in narrative form. So what in the hell do I have a supply demand graph for? What good is it going to do me? I'm not going to talk in supply demand terms. Can you imagine me sitting in a briefing and, well, here's what happens when you move the supply curve, and about that time everybody goes to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not going to work. But it's really, really indicative of what I call stale thinking. We're trying to solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's thinking. And that yesterday's process is one thing, but yesterday's thinking is another. And also depending on our past laurels is really difficult. I was listening to Tom Brady do an interview about how he compares himself to other quarterbacks. And he says, I don't. He said, I admire everyone for what they brought to the game. I just tried to be the best I could be. He said, and if somebody can win 7 Super Bowls, I'm going to cheer them on. It's not about that kind of comparison. This is, it's just about what I can bring to the game. And it's what I feel like every day when I'm trying to live out this book is I just want to be the best I can be every day. And I want to try to get a little bit better. And that's why I said in the intro to the book is what makes life better. And what makes life better is trying to get better every day, just a little bit. And unfortunately, 40-year-old thinking doesn't work very well. And that's just really truthfully laziness on my part. And I admit it. My quote for today on the run was real interesting. The degree to which we can grow is directly proportionate to which we can hear negative things about ourselves without running away.
Right.
I mean, come on, that is so true.
Right.
Because we do want to live on our past laurels.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that creates a lot of losses. And in truth, a lot of unnecessary losses. The one thing about knowing how to do something is, you can bring that perspective to the game, but it's a new game.
Yeah, it's definitely an amazing situation when you learn that losing, I don't know. I mean, there's a whole lot to be said there because as Brady talking about being his biggest competitor. That's something that in life that I think I learned in the last 5 years is that I'm always in competition with someone else. But the reality is if I do the best that I can do for myself, I'm going to win because I am the person who is in charge of how hard I work. And so looking at those outside forces, like someone else doing something or getting something more than you or whatever, getting the break, you start to lose yourself because you're going downhill trying to figure out why they're doing better instead of trying to figure out why you're doing worse. It's just an amazing thing.
Right, and it is really really challenging to wake up and try to incrementally improve every day.
Mm-hmm.
It is shocking because you do not feel like, I look at the world as thriving and surviving, and I got to tell you that there are a lot of mornings where it's survival. It's not thriving. It's like get up one foot in front of the other. It's so funny. My son asked me. I had this huge cut that I did with a 5-blade razor, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
But I managed. And he said to me, Dad, did you cut yourself shaving? I said, uh-huh. But I mean, it wasn't little. It was like this long red spot here, right?
Yeah.
And I said, and he said, I didn't know you could cut yourself like that with a 5-blade razor. And I said, well, it seems you can.
You press hard enough or you go the wrong direction, anything's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what you learn,
Yeah.
You battle through.
I think that's a great lesson too, because I'll tell you, I'm kind of in one of those right now with myself. It's like like we had mentioned before, like I haven't been feeling well lately, and there's all these things that it seems like one thing just piles onto the other, and it just kind of starts dragging you down. And you have two choices. You're like, hey, power through it, or just give up. I mean, it's as little. I think people go through that every day, and I think what the big thing is that you choose how you're going to do it. Like this morning, I got to be honest. I woke up this morning. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I'm just tired. I'm burnt out. I've been sick for the last couple of days. My wife is sick. My son has been making noise all night long, which we have the monitor in our ears, and it's like he wakes us up. And then I'm one of those people that if you wake me up in the middle of sleep, it's hard for me to go back to sleep. And then if I don't get the minimum that I need, which I've maximized my life that I get the minimum, I'm toast. So, I mean, it's one of those things you have to power through. If you don't, then you're not gonna find that carrot.
Yeah, it was funny. Last night I got a call from my son who was in obvious pain. He's at Fort Huachuca training, and he said, "Hey, Dad," and you could hear the anguish in his voice. "What does it feel like when you dislocate your shoulder?"
Oh.
And I was like, "Really?" I said, "Tell me what you did." He told me. I said, "Did you hear a pop?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, go to the medic." He says, "I'm on my way." I said, "Yeah, they're going to pop it back in."
Yeah.
And he was like, and it was his throwing shoulder too.
Oh,
it was his right. And I went, "Okay, well, that's the end of your quarterbacking career, dude. No big deal."
Yep.
That's, and he goes, "Does it supposed to hurt this bad?" I said, sure does.
That's one of those ones that it will smart for a while. I going through college, going into PE, we had you have to take classes. You have to take skill classes, right? And one of them was basketball. And here I am, 33 years old, playing against all these, like, we're actually playing a game. The teacher liked to teach it so that you play to learn, and I think that's awesome. I mean, obviously I played basketball before, but teaching you how to play it is a different thing, and learning those skills. And he put us in groups with all these kids, and they're kids, and I'm 33, and they're like 18, right out of high school. Some of these kids had just got done playing basketball in high school. I hadn't played organized sports for, 20 years, and I'm playing against this kid who's 6'7", I'm 6'3", and he's probably a better basketball player than me, but he was tall and skinny, and he could just put his arms up and stop anything from anyone, and he thought he was kind of cool or whatever. And I go all out. There's no like half speed for me because I can't have the same skill at a slower speed than I do at full speed, right? And he was guarding me or something, and I laid my shoulder into him thinking I was going to move him. And I had that same thing, pop. And I'm like, oh, this is great. He didn't move. He didn't move like I thought he was going to move. And I separated
your shoulder did.
Yep.
Oh man, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I took up basketball again at 50,
uh,
right? And I had a former NBA guard
oh,
uh, getting me back in shape, right? And he did things with the ball I didn't think was possible, right? I mean, literally possible. And so every day he made me better. I mean, because he just schooled me every single solitary day. He
mhm.
just decided, at what level he was going to school me. But the point was, he made me better. Every single day, I got a little bit better. Till eventually, by the end of about a year, I was competent,
Yep.
right, to play at that with that group of players, former college players, former, you know, NBA players. But yeah, talk about being schooled, my lord.
I
Mm.
think that's one of the things though that people search out, right? Like you could go find someone who just anyone off the street to play the game with, right? But people who win are the people who go look for someone who's better and then emulate that and try to be better, you know.
Oh yeah, and that's back to the whole point of this about losing is such a learning proposition as long as you're doing it for the right reason. You can, blow up three quizzes in a row. It doesn't matter if the quizzes are designed to make you better for the test. As long as you're better on the test, who cares?
Right.
Right. You can't get into the minutia of being perfect. And that is a real problem for me because I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. So consequently, losing stings a little more for me than it does for most. But I have to remind myself that it's a learning proposition. And
Yep.
so that's like I said, like you talked about waking up and not feeling like you've got any juice, or like setting at mile 2 and thinking, okay, what is success today? What do I need to do to make today successful? And you're thinking about it as you're doing it because you're out of gas.
Right.
And so you're just like, okay, how about if I just have a powerful kick on the last quarter mile of my run? Is that winning today? Right now, yes, that's winning. That's thriving.
Yeah.
Some days
Find
that's what you get.
Yep, find those little wins in the day and continue to just keep improving. Well, this
So as,
chapter, go ahead.
yeah, so I mentioned that I did get the book back from the editors,
Uh-huh.
and it was a light group of edits. I've got a few things to do, but it should go on to the formatter by Monday.
By Monday.
So I still should be on schedule for the second or third week in February, pretty much on schedule.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about this chapter just a little bit. I mean, we've been talking about the basis of losing, but the interesting thing about this is where you brought this together is basically losing out on a date with a girl or something, right?
Right. It was it was a strange situation where I was at the Lanesdorff Hotel or Lanesborough Hotel in London, and really really high end ritzy hotel, and I was literally sitting in a fireplace reading a book. And there was this beautiful woman that walked in. She was clearly Russian by her facial features and beautiful, gorgeous blue eyes. And she walked in, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and she looked at me up and down, and then just looked away dismissively, like, oh my gosh, another one of those. She looked at, and I mean, it wasn't that she turned her nose up at me, but it was pretty close. So then she sits down at the bar, and that spikes the competitive part of me to go, really? You completely dismissed me. Well, okay, hold on a second. Let me try this. It just so happened that I had mentioned in the book that I knew the bartender, and he knew her. And so I kind of looked up at him. He looked at me, kind of shrugged, like, "Go ahead, big guy, give it a shot." And so I walked up to her and I spoke to her in Russian and greeted her. And she greeted me back in Russian, cocked her head, and basically said to me is, "I don't drink with men from state security." And I was like, what in the, where did that come from? And I said, "I'm not with state security." And she said, "Well, then you're a bodyguard or something like that." I said, "No, I'm just a businessman here." I said, where did you, I don't understand. Where did this come from?" And she said, "Well, you're not afraid." And I went, oh, shoot. Okay. And what she brought me back to was my old days in West Germany when you realized on their side of the Iron Curtain that the only people that are not afraid are the people in state security. Everybody else is concerned about the people in state security because they're the people that will take you away in the middle of the night and you will be ghosted and never heard from again for maybe forever. And so that cockiness she saw on my face, that confidence, was what led her to believe that. And part of it also is that I used to be in the version of what she would call the GRU, which was Army intelligence for her. In the Soviet side, for me, it was just Army intelligence. So I kind of felt like I was outed. And that's when she teased me and said, well, what were you, James Bond? And, I wasn't James Bond. Come on, man. But this was just her, beating the crap out of me, right? And then she switched to English, which was because she obviously knew my Russian wasn't homegrown. So then she switches to English, right? And then just continues to beat me up. Finally, I sat down and we ended up talking for the better part of probably 3 hours. It was wonderful. I walked her to her car, all that kind of stuff. She wanted me to go back to her place. And I was like, we've both been drinking. This is not a good choice. Let's pick this up another time. And it's just one of those things where I got my ass kicked all night. And so I wasn't feeling completely confident at that point, even though she was saying, well, hey, why don't you come back? No, I'm pretty much going to stop the ass kicking now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how that goes because just getting there, getting tore up the whole time. And then all of a sudden it's almost like you won. But then on the same token, it's like she was trying to feel you out. She's trying to figure out if you could stand it, if you could withhold it, if you could stay course.
Yeah, she definitely won the night. But that's what I tried to say at the beginning of the piece is that, did I get the sweet or the sour for the night? And I say I got the sweet because number one, I got to meet her, but number two, I got to be reminded of who I used to be and that I was operating off of who I used to be, not who I was. Uh-huh. And that's a scary thing. Because there's a certain level of competence you need to go through life to do certain things. Like I'm also a pilot, a skydiver, all these other things. And if you're living on your past laurels, that'll get you killed.
Yeah.
And, that just means to stay focused and in the moment, not dealing with stale, old thinking that, what I did 40 years ago with me in economics is going to carry the day now. Well, conceptually I understand, but really it's not going to carry the day. I actually have to work harder. Right. Because I didn't have an economics course 18 months ago, right? Yeah. And I thought that I was stronger and I was actually weaker. And that's when you get scary. When you don't know who you are, that's what's scary. And that's what I didn't know starting the semester. It's fine. I'll still hopefully get my A. But, I'm going to have to work for it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because I'm trying to protect a 4.0 through my master's program. So I've only got 2 classes left, right? Really? I'm going to get my ass kicked at the end?
Right.
I'm like, but, that's kind of how it goes. If it is what it is. But I'm not going down without a fight.
Yeah. I went through that same situation with my master's. I didn't get my 4.0 from one professor who didn't like the way that I wrote. I tell you what, it hurts. But I still got my master's.
Oh no, my undergrad, the second undergrad I just got, I had a 3.98.
Yeah.
Because somebody gave me an A-.
Yeah.
They wouldn't round up the 92.6 to a 93.
That's a stupid. My professor gave me they give you the rubrics or whatever, and you write to the rubric. That's what I do. That's how I write. Mm-hmm. Here it is. Yeah. Here it is. Here it is. Send it over to her. She gives me a C. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? She goes, yeah, it doesn't meet the requirements. I'm like, where doesn't it meet the requirements? Her response was, okay, there's 6 parts of this. I want you to go through with 6 different colors and highlight the area where you met the rubric. And I went through and I highlighted them all and showed her every single one of them in the different colors and sent it back to her. And she goes, well, obviously we don't agree on this, so I'll just give you a B. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me, lady? My 1B in my master's degree.
Yeah, I know. Doesn't it does just great the you know,
Yeah.
but it's just like anything else, right? I'm trying to go into a PhD program. I don't think anybody's going to kill me or pump me out of a program for having one B. But still, I was like, but again, that's part of in my case, stale thinking. I wrote notes to myself at the end of the year and said, make sure to finish the program strong, right? Make sure to finish strong. One of my goals for 2024 was finish my master's strong, get into my next program, which is fully paid, but finish strong. And I didn't do that. Why didn't I do that? Because I didn't start strong.
Yeah.
I was playing catch up, and I hate that in a run too, right? I'll do a 5K and my first, because it's basically north of 3 miles. So I'll do my first mile slow. So guess what I'm doing? I'm playing catch up for mile 2 and mile 3, right? And really having to push mile 3. And I'm like, why did you not just put the effort into the first mile?
Right.
What were you thinking? Back to stale thinking. That's okay. I can just coast through the first mile. No, you're being dumb, because that now puts all the pressure on you back in. I don't mind the pressure, but still, it's just a little bit of strategy, a little bit of better planning. And it just, so again, I'm not hurting myself here. My first exam is next week. I think this would really torture you. I have 65 pages of notes and study. 65 pages.
No thanks. I cannot. Oh man.
I mean, I was looking at it, I was starting to get it like daunting, right? Like this is a lot of notes and nomenclature, but it is what it is.
Yep. You got to do it when you got to do it. Michelle says, yeah, I'm back in classes. For an additional designation in my profession? Any suggestions for focus?
Gosh, one of the hardest things I've found is create almost a sacred space for yourself on studying, where you can shut off the distractions and put your phone away. Because for me, it's really, really difficult to get undistracted time where I'm actually emerging in the book or whatever material I'm on. And it makes it really, really, especially when I'm writing, right? Because you know what this feels like. I don't know how you did your writing, but I needed to write it completely and then put it down for a day so that I could pick it back up and look at how it flowed. Uh-huh. And that really required that I have undistracted time. And man, let me tell you, the world between going to school back 40 years ago and now, the distractions are silly.
Yeah.
Just absolutely silly.
I'm thinking back to when, because, it's been a few years since I took my master's, but I would stare at the computer, and you have your phone, your iPad, your whatever, your kids, your family, your TV, all those things are all right in front of you. It's not like when I went to college the first time, it was like, you got to study, you go to the library and you go sit in the library because you can't watch TV there. The only thing you got around you is books, and the distractions that you have are limited. So yeah, that makes sense. Find a place where you can limit your distractions.
Yeah. I always called it a sacred space where you're alone with your thoughts and you're alone with whatever material you have, so that you can actually feel like you can absorb it, which is really, really, again, I think it's incredibly difficult sometimes, because I have to shut off the alerts on like my iPad, because I'll be sitting there working on something and the alert will come off from TikTok. Yeah. I'm like, I don't give a crap about TikTok right now. So you're trying to make all these alerts. Oh yeah, no, you don't even want to go there, because that's a 30-minute segue, right? Yep. But I even do it on research. I'm terrible about that. On research, I'll go off on a topic, right, and then I'll see a footnote, right, and I'll hit the footnote, and the footnote will send me to another study, which will have another footnote, which will send me to another study. Yeah. And 35 minutes later, I've chased the little bunny down the trail, right?
Yeah. All extra information that you didn't need because you're curious.
Oh gosh, yes. Hold on a second. What does that? Who said that? Oh yes. Oh,
I do that with movies all the time. Like I'm watching movies and I'm like, oh, look, it's Charlie Sheen. What other movies have I seen with Charlie Sheen? And then you start going, you're like, oh yeah, I need to watch that one, and I need to watch. I mean, it's
Yeah.
instead of engulfing yourself in the moment. I had a conversation when I was in Houston last week with the CEO of this company, and he's talking about how listening to books, um, on Audible, because that's how I do it, right? Like I found a way to be
Right.
able to read, audibly, instead of having to visually read it, because I just don't have the focus and the time and to just sit there and go and look at it. But I know throughout my day, I'm driving, I can listen to music or listen to the book instead of reading it. So I'm still getting the information. But he goes, you know what I find out? And he's right, because this is what happens is I find that when I listen to something, I don't give it the attention that I would give it if I read it, because now there's other distractions going on. So, people always say they can multitask, but the reality is you can't really multitask. You can't give your attention to two things at one time. So, you're attentively driving while you're listening and you're understanding and you're taking all this information in, and you haven't really given all the attention you needed to the process. So,
One of the things that teaches you about multitasking is flying a plane. Okay. Because one of the things that you learn is you learn how to first fly the plane. Then you need to learn how to talk to the other people flying the planes or the tower, right? In all these handoffs that you have to do. And so what happens when you're learning to fly is your flight instructor takes care of all the conversations and you just concentrate on the plane. Well, when they add that workload into you, right? And so they add that workload. So you are not multitasking, but you're changing your focus from one thing to another, to another, to another. You're hopping, right?
yeah.
So you're looking outside the cockpit at the surroundings, keeping your eyes vigilant, right? You're scanning the instruments and you're listening to traffic, understanding where you are on the map, what kind of codes you have, what frequencies you're needing to do, what your game plan is. All this is in your head at the same time. And then somebody will throw an emergency at you.
No.
Right. So all this is about overload, right? You're just overloading until you get to that sensory point where you crater. And the point is you're never supposed to crater. You're supposed to continue to fly the plane. And so it's a real good instructive way of learning how not to study. Do not study in a multitasking. You need to be really kind of immersed in the logic of things. And let me tell you what saves you in any kind of pursuit is see one, do one, teach one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the faculties that it requires for us to sit and see something required for us to take that in and process it and then do it. Now you have to reverse around and teach what you just did. Okay. That's a completely different process. You as a teacher know that, right?
Yep.
It's one thing to hear it, another thing to do it, and then it's even more to teach it. And that's the way that you really become proficient at anything. And then I realized that when you're not taking something in, like you talked about Audible, is because what are you doing? You're just seeing it or hearing it. Mm-hmm. You're not doing it, and you're sure not teaching it. So what does it do? It just kind of stagnates. It doesn't do anything.
Exactly. It's crazy. But there's so many different tips and tricks and things like that can make it work. And it's funny, I was thinking as we were talking about, like, put those things away, and Michelle is saying also going to leave my phone in the car. And it's like the reason why we don't do that is because of, FOMO, right? Like we're afraid we're going to miss something. We don't know what's going to happen on our phone because now it's at our fingertips. We're going to miss every single thing that's happening, and we're afraid we're going to miss out on that. And sometimes you just got to live in the moment without those distractions.
One of the hardest things for us as parents, because all of us are parents, is you really can't put the phone down because of your kids.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest. Like I said, last night I got the call about dislocating a shoulder, right?
Yep.
You just realize that once you have kids, that phone's going to be close to you, irregardless. Just because when you haven't went to the next phase yet, because I have 5 grandkids, so you now you go from the kids to the grandkids stage, so you kind of have your phone all the time, right? But I do turn it off as far as being silent for everybody else except for family,
Yeah. Yep.
at least to give myself some sanity.
Yep. Well, what a great conversation. This has been very enjoyable. Next week, we're going to be talking about, let me scroll down here, being limitless, which is, I'm sure, a great topic to talk about. All these little lessons popping in here every day. So
yeah, that's about fearlessness. Once we become fearless, we become limitless.
Yep.
And fearless is really hard.
Oh, yeah. Are we ever really fearless?
No, we're not.
All right, Robert. Well, thanks for hopping on, and we'll do it again next week. I mean, we're getting through this, and book's getting close to coming out, and when that thing drops, we'll talk a little bit differently.
Perfect. Thank you, Wes.
All right. All right, everyone. We will see you next week.